Hello everyone and welcome to American Thought Leaders Now. I'm Jan Jekielek. Today my very special guest is Miklos Santo. He is the chairman of the Center for Fundamental Rights in Hungary and also the chairman of CPAC Hungary. Miklos, so good to have you on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Miklos, so fundamental rights, this is a question actually that not everyone is clear on these days. So what are these fundamental rights that your center champions?
Look, our fundamental rights, basic rights, are God-given rights. And what we see nowadays when those so-called second and third and fourth generation of those rights are coming up, that the liberals, the progressives, the left, tries to transform every and each human desire into a human right. If you feel yourself a lady and would like to give a legal status to that, it is in your right because that is your desire, that is your personal will. I would rather use common sense approach to fundamental rights. The progressives do think that every and each right, every and each institution is or are the construction of the people. So if it is the construction of the people, then those institutions, those rights can be deconstructed. The family can be deconstructed because it is just a social institution. The so-called gender roles can be deconstructed or changed because those are just social habits and constructions. So I think what we should be reminded, the most important fundamental rights: freedom of assembly, freedom of thought, freedom of religion, etc. The second and third progressively driven so-called fundamental rights are going against the first generation of human rights. There is the question of freedom of thought and freedom of speech. In the name of political correctness, if it comes to different minorities, they would like to stop, they would like to cancel the freedom of thought, which is the most important human right in history.
Freedom of thought, and freedom of conscience is another way to describe that. And I agree with you wholly. I want to talk a little bit about CPAC Hungary. This is, of course, this is a large conservative event in America. There's been these other CPACs, one in Japan. There's conservative movements all over the place, but of course Hungary is known for it. Okay, so what is this CPAC Hungary all about?
We will have the third CPAC Hungary in a row after 2022 and 2023. This is the only one CPAC actually on European soil. Our goal is, with this whole CPAC Hungary movement in my country, is to show the world and to make the liberals very frustrated and angry with showing that we localist, national, populist conservatives, we are able to cooperate at the international level. Because the progressive side, the leftists, liberals, are internationalists. The socialist type agendas and political ideologies are international globalist ideologies. And they always try to argue that we nationalists, we localists, we conservatives, we are not able to cooperate at the international level because we are too deeply rooted in our own local traditions, and this is a burden on us, preventing the global or regional or international cooperation of conservative forces. They attack so aggressively not only our most cherished values, the God, homeland and the family, but they attack on a daily basis common sense with this whole gender nonsense, gender ideology, the sexualization of the children, with this whole multicultural pro-migration agenda, which tries to tell you that you should not be proud of your national identity, that you should not protect your state sovereignty, etc. So it causes a boomerang effect, because this very aggressive attack is there in the US, here in the US, it's in South America, it's in Europe, it's in Australia, it's in Japan, everywhere else in the world. And I do feel that people of common sense, not only conservatives, do realize that we should step up and go against this liberal mainstream. But as this liberal mainstream is globally organized and is globalist, then the counterattack, the countermove should be globally, not globalist, but should be global as well. And this galvanizes the need for the international cooperation. And Hungary, yes, it's true, it serves as not only a laboratory, but a lighthouse for conservative ideas and conservative practices as well.
You know, I'm remembering back to the original Polish Sejm, right? Everyone had their vote, everyone had a veto, right? And it was very difficult to achieve, pass legislation for this reason. There's perhaps better systems than that. But the flip side is when you have apparently a lot of top-down control, becomes more efficient. Of course, the Chinese Communist Party has shown us that, what they always call, it's so efficient over there, right? Because top-down central control, total control. But there is some truth to this, right? It's a lot harder to organize from the ground, from the bottom up, than it is from the top down in some ways.
You mean to organize the international conservative movement from down to the top?
Well, it sort of has to, doesn't it?
First of all, of course, the grassroots movement is needed among conservative political forces. But it's also very important for us, and the Hungarian example is a very good example from this point of view, and that is why the liberals in Brussels or in Washington, D.C. are so frustrated about Prime Minister Orban and the right-wing Hungarian government, because the Hungarian right was able to win the elections and was able to remain in power. Because usually that's the liberal approach that, okay, there is a conservative government somewhere in Europe, they will be in power for 4 years or 5 years, and then if there is a problem with them, we just kick them out somehow. For example, with interfering into domestic issues and local elections. But the Hungarian example shows that if you do have your conservative values and ideas, you do have the political know-how, you do know how to campaign, and you're able to remain in power for more than one election cycle, then you will be able to put your ideas to praxis, to implement conservative taxation policies, to implement conservative family policies, to implement measures for border protection, to maintain Hungary as it is, as Hungary, to fight the fights with Brussels, with the Brussels deep state for your own rights, and for example, to protect the Hungarian families if it comes to gender sensitization, which is very heavily promoted by the Brussels deep state. Of course, from one perspective, it's very important to organize the conservative movement from the down to the top. But you should be aware that you should not play by the liberals' rules. That's the most important lesson we have learned in Hungary. So if you are in government, you should be in power as well. There was a very well-known Marxist Italian philosopher called Antonio Gramsci. He was wise. And his advice to his comrades was that at the first step, do not bother with politics, with party politics. Do bother with culture. If you win in the culture, if you win the war for the culture, then you will be able to win very easily the elections if it comes to party politics. And that is very important to learn.
You know, Miklos, you mentioned, these various conservative policies. We don't have a ton of time, but there's one policy or set of policies in particular that Hungary has really, that sticks out to me as being, remarkable, because this praxis, this enactment of the policy has actually shown fruit, right? And this is, of course, the area of family policy. And my own contention, you think about societies, we say the replacement number is 2.1, right, kids per family. Societies that are below that are, I would think most people would hopefully believe are in rough shape, right? You don't believe in your children. Hungary, of course, was also in this kind of situation, as is every Western liberal democracy, as that I'm aware of. However, you have moved the needle on this.
It's true. First of all, the idea is to have a work-fair society where everyone who is able has the possibility to work, to join the labor market. The first idea, which was put in practice in Hungary, is to lower the unemployment rate, lower all of the social benefits which were food stamps, so which were guaranteed automatically by the state, implementing measures that encouraged people to join the labor market. If you work legally on the labor market, then you will get money from the state in the form of tax reduction, and there are other very generous forms of financing the establishing of the family and to encourage people to have more children. And this created a very good environment for working and having family at the same time. On the other hand, of course, you should implement legal, even constitutional steps to protect the family and to protect the children. The Hungarian constitution enshrines that the marriage is between one man and one woman. It enshrines that the mother is a woman and the father is a man, and those modifications were extremely needed. While, for example, the fertility rate grew by more than 30% in the past 10 years. It was 1.2 10 or 13 years ago. Now it's around 1.6. It's not enough, but there is a 30% rise. The number of marriages doubled in the past 10 years because of the very generous benefits from the state for the fresh couples. But the most important figure, I will tell you, is this. The number of abortions in Hungary halved in the past 10 years without any type of modification, without any type of amendment to the respective law on abortion. Because the behavior of the state changed, but the social circumstances, the social feeling, the social environment changed into being a much more family-friendly country. It's trendy, it's fancy, it's sexy to have family and to have more children. The number of abortions halved in Hungary, and that's a fantastic result, I think.
You've created incentive structures that will encourage people to have families, which is actually a natural human predilection, I might add. It's not a...
It's not a social construction.
Exactly.
The problem is obvious. The Western societies became too comfortable. And that's why I highlighted that the goal in Hungary is to create a work-fair society instead of a welfare society, because take a look at the fertility rates in Western Europe. It means that they handle having children as a burden, as some kind of a problem. But if you create a work-fair society, if you create this family-friendly environment...
I like that, work-fair society.
Work-fair society.
That's what you're... Okay.
Yeah. So if you create this, there is a hope. Of course, there is still a lot to do in Hungary. And every and each year, new family policy incentives are carried out. And I know for an American audience, it may sound a little bit socialist, that the state gives you money in various forms, via the taxation system, via the labor market, etc. But the very important thing, and this is in the core of the Hungarian conservative success, is that we should learn that we conservatives should not be dogmatic. Socialists, they are very dogmatic. Liberals, progressives, they always stick to their emotionally driven ideology. But we conservatives, we should act according to the reality and giving answers to reality. Pragmatic. Yeah, exactly. So if there is a problem which should be handled like the low fertility rates in a country. And if there is a solution via using the methods and channels owned or operated by the state, then the state should act. Even if at the first sound, at the first step, it sounds socialist, but actually it serves conservative ideas.
Very, very interesting. I'm very much looking forward to seeing how this, project works out, because this is a very serious issue in every Western country that I'm aware of.
If we can welcome you at CPAC Hungary at the end of April, I can give you a personal tour to show this.
Well, thank you very much. I'll absolutely. I would love to take you up on that. Let's see what happens in the next few months. Well, Miklos Santo, such a pleasure to have had you on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.